Hello, I'm David Hunt, and my guest today is a dear friend of mine, Ande K. Hello, Andy.
Hello, David. Thanks for inviting me along.
My pleasure. Andy is an extraordinary artist, Indigenous artist, and his paintings grace the walls of the United Nations buildings in New York and in Paris. He's very humble with, like me talking about it, and I'd sing your praises all the time because he's damn good. And even to the extent that one of the major banks in Australia for 12 months used one of his images on their ATM screens when you would go to an ATM, and also in magazines and newspaper ads as well.
And television.
And television ads, yeah. there was as well. So, Andy, where did it all start? As a little kid?
Painting traditional Indigenous art. I'm from near the Gold Coast, New South Wales, Tweed Heads. And as a young kid, I learnt symbols from older siblings and from aunties and uncles and our cousins, and learnt symbols then. And so I painted all my life. I did go off and study for a Bachelor of Education, but decided that art would be my career. Someone actually asked me, if you knew you wouldn't fail, what would you do? And I had this fanciful notion that I would become an artist and paint paintings for a living.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you've been very successful with it as well.
Yeah, well, it's kept me busy and kept me out of trouble.
Yeah, well, and you need to do that. How long ago did it happen? Because you did, as you said, you went off and studied,
yep.
And then you came back to art. So how long ago was that?
That would have been around mid-90s.
Yep.
And I didn't know very much about art and like selling professionally art. And so I took a few paintings to a gallery in Sydney, and they loved it, and they took, they ordered a dozen paintings off those. So that's where it all started. And in Sydney, it wasn't so much the galleries, but more tourist outlets.
Okay.
Yeah, like there was a good spot at the Toaster Building in Sydney Harbour, right near the Opera House.
Yep.
Which was
Circular Quay.
Yeah, yep. Circular Quay. And I had about half a dozen different outlets, and so by the time I painted for one and then painted for the next one and painted for the next one, it was time to go back to the first one again and yep. restock them. So yeah.
Over the years, because you have been very successful with those points that I mentioned at the beginning, is that you haven't wanted to flood the market with your paintings as well. So you're actually quite selective on how often you paint, and sometimes you back away a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's a luxury for an artist to be able to do that. And I know that there are a lot of artists out there that struggle to sell paintings.
Yep.
But yeah, I see that as a luxury.
The actual, and it's the dot form that you do.
Yeah, from my area it's dots and lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to stick to, isn't it? As part of your legacy is that you've got to paint within the tradition of your homeland.
Yeah,
is that right?
Of our stories.
Yep.
Because living in Melbourne, there are artists in Melbourne, and their stories are for those artists to tell.
Yep.
And it's not for someone else to come in and tell those stories about Melbourne.
Yep.
So I tell stories from my home.
And what do you normally do within your paintings? What's the story?
There's a lot of geographical features in the artwork. There's also a lot of weather patterns like rain and wind and clouds, etc. Yeah. So it's mostly about the natural environment.
And it's often a shot from above.
It can be a bird's eye view of
yep.
the land.
Which I really like that. I'm lucky enough to have one of your paintings. Mine is that, and it's the rivers running into, or mountain ranges.
Yeah.
The way you do it, it's very contemporary, but it's also very traditional at the same time. And it's not as sort of, like you're quite structured in the way you paint, aren't you?
I am, but that takes a lot of time to hone in your own personal style while using traditional symbols. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can look at other artists and and you see their painting, you know exactly who that artist
Yeah.
is.
Well, when I see one of yours, I know exactly that it's yours because it's a particular style that you do.
And that does take a lot of time to hone
I bet
that
you
own
it
unique
does.
style.
Over the years as well, because it's been very kind to you, that you've actually been very supportive with your art by giving paintings to be auctioned at fundraisers. And
It's important to give back, I think. Give where you can, and I think that enhances your just general well-being. Yeah, to be able to give back and be in a position to do that.
yeah.
To help others.
And that's so lovely that you do that. And you know, like, I've over the years I've asked you to donate for Joy, and you do it without, you know, like, I don't have to ask twice. You go, yep, okay.
Yeah, it's important. I'm all for a good cause.
Yep.
Especially when it helps other people, you know, people that are out on the fringes.
Yep.
Like being involved with radio, it gets a message out to people that they're not alone.
Yep.
In order to be able to do that,
Yeah.
takes money.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's one way of helping out the community.
Absolutely. And how do you paint? You know, like when you're doing that dot form, what sort of brush or what? How do you do it?
Usually paint the background a certain colour and then just with a twig off a tree, usually a eucalyptus tree,
Yeah.
dot by dot. And like when you're sitting there with this huge canvas in front of you and you put the first dot on, you think, oh, just a little bit more to go.
Yeah, just a little bit more to go. And so the bigger you know, like you must take a lot of deep breaths when you're doing a big one. How long does one take to paint?
It depends on the size and the style. Sometimes it can be done in a day if I'm, you know, dedicated to that.
Yep.
But usually I spend a couple of hours over a couple of days.
Right. And it's often good with writing and with art is to walk away from it a lot too, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
like you come back a lot more refreshed.
Sometimes I'll have several on the go, so I
Okay.
can move from one painting to another.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I suppose you've got to move away from it to let paint dry so that you don't smudge it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that. You're from the Gold Coast. You were living in Sydney when you first started to become popular. You're here in Melbourne, and you've been in Melbourne for quite a few years. Why did you end up in Melbourne? How did that all come about? Was there somebody that you might have met in a bar somewhere?
And initially I came to Melbourne for an exhibition.
Right.
On near Parliament Station. It was on Spring Street, but I fell in love with Melbourne.
Right.
I love Sydney and I love Melbourne, but I love them both for different reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just decided to pack up and move to Melbourne.
But hold on, I thought you met your partner.
I met my partner in Sydney.
Yep.
And he's living here in Melbourne. He was living here in Melbourne
Now he's
for over 20 years.
He's a Canadian.
He's from Canada.
Right. So he's from Canada. He was in Melbourne. You were in Sydney at that stage. So you met in a bar.
Yeah.
And you know, like you just had a quick conversation. And then all of a sudden you almost knew.
Yeah. Well, he was visiting for relatives in Sydney for Christmas, so we met around Christmas time, and he came back to Melbourne, and then several months later I came for the exhibition, and then we just decided that that's the way forward for us, and that was 11 years ago. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And he is a lecturer.
He is.
In law.
Yep.
At Melbourne University.
Yep. Professor of law. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
Professor of law. Now, with him being involved in the law fraternity, there's a lot of textbooks. And one of the textbooks, he approached you and said, what would you think about putting one of your paintings on the front of one of our textbooks?
Yeah. Again, a luxury for an artist to be able to put a book cover. But I've had that opportunity several times. So the recent one was overseas in England. There's an English textbook with my artwork on the cover now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah.
How did that happen? Was it through Ian, your partner, or?
It was through my partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and several textbooks here in Australia have gone through, so it builds up confidence in other publishers.
Yep.
for their texts as well.
What does that mean to you as an artist? You know, like to You can see one of your paintings on a wall. You can see it at an ATM machine. You can see it in magazines and whatever. But when it's a cover of a textbook, that's something a little bit special as well, isn't it?
Yeah, again, it's an honour because it's my people's stories that are being shown all over the world. And so it's an honour for me to provide those stories in art form.
And you've got a sister. I've met one sister in particular who's a character.
Yep.
And how proud is your family of what you've achieved as an artist?
I have another sister who is also an artist, but she does jewellery work.
Oh, okay.
So we're the only two artists in the family. All the rest was quite a large bunch of us. I'm one of 15 siblings.
Wow.
Yep. So only two artists, and all the others are happy doing what they do. And my sister, she's another sister again. She works with childcare, and she says, "Look, it's not like I go to work. I go and do what I love every day, and they pay me for it."
Yeah.
So I feel like that as well.
But as an artist, and with an Indigenous artist, and like the art you do is like world famous, they must be very proud of you.
As you said, I try to keep it in check, like not get a big head about it. So I don't really discuss a lot about my artwork with my siblings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they are pretty proud of me.
And you're a very humble person, and shy person until you get to know you've got a wicked sense of humour, and that's very endearing as well within your artwork. But what does it mean to you as an artist? What does it bring out when you're sitting there creating this piece of art and your thought patterns? At the end of the day, when you finish that one that might have taken you 2 or 3 days, what's the feeling that you get?
Thank goodness that's done.
Come on, I'm looking for something a little bit deeper here.
There is a sense of accomplishment.
Yep.
And I don't have any paintings left over. They always sell. So
Yep.
that's a confidence booster as well. So yeah, it's a relief, and it's quite an honour to think that this painting, something that I've created, will be shown off in someone's house somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of word of mouth. People go and visit their friends and they see my artwork and it's like, oh wow, that's a nice painting, where do I get one of those?
And that's how you're selling a lot these days, isn't
Yeah.
it? By commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fewer exhibitions, because the purpose of an exhibition is not only to show but to sell. But yeah, so I've got to get my act together and have an exhibition soon.
I can remember the last one you had was a long time ago, and you actually sold a lot of your paintings very cheap.
Yeah, at the time, yeah.
Which that would be different now.
Yeah, and actually the galleries that I have been dealing with before, they say, Andy, your prices, you've got to do something about your prices because you're not getting what you're worth. So I've had to change that. It's a bit difficult because I want people to have the artwork without the huge cost, because Indigenous art can be very, very expensive. So yeah, I have to, raise the price a little. A little.
A little. And again, and that's another lovely point, is that you're not just doing it to rip people off. You're doing it because you want people to appreciate your art and see it on their wall.
Yeah, and see my stories and my people's stories. That's the most important part of it, I think, yeah. Is
there one thing that you would like to achieve as an artist that you haven't done yet? Because there's not much left.
That's a good question. I think I'm happy where I am now. I don't really want for much, but if I could extend myself, I would probably do a major exhibition.
When you say a major exhibition, what do you class as a major exhibition? Like, where would you want to exhibit?
I would love to exhibit probably in one of the galleries here in Melbourne again, one of the big galleries. Major exhibition, I think, would involve major works, obviously, which are, metre by 2 metres each artwork. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy.
Absolutely, and the other side of it is that, you know, like you've got this studio in your backyard, which was like a nanny flat in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That you use now as your
As
studio.
my studio, yeah.
You wouldn't be able to fit those big pieces in there, would you?
Yeah, yeah. There's a bit of space there.
Oh, is it? It's bigger than I thought it was.
Room to swing a canvas. Yeah.
Not a cat.
Not a cat.
What would you focus on? What would be the content of, you know, because you know how an exhibition often follows a stream or a pattern. Have you got something in mind that you would like to do? Because
my artwork is dots, a lot of it, and lines, but I wouldn't mind exploring pointillism. It's a French movement. It's kind of like mosaics, but on canvas. It's pictures made out of dots.
Okay.
You know, like pixels on a digital image.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, so I'd love to explore that. That'd be challenging.
Right. Because at one stage, and I don't know where you've ended up with it, you were actually trying with your dots to do 3D.
Yeah, well, I've accomplished that. That was quite difficult because you need a special spectrum glasses to see the 3D effect, but you can't really paint with the glasses on, so it's a lot of guesswork.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of honing in, you know, the spectrum, because the 3D effect comes off the spectrum. Like a blue will look very close, whereas red will look very far away.
Yeah.
So, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the colours that, and it's where you place it as well.
Yeah,
so
rather than two images with bifocal image, two images to make a 3D, this one works off the spectrum.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Rainbow.
Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Ande K, thank you so much. I can't wait to see this major exhibition that you're going to do, because we've got to make that happen.
Yep, I'll keep you posted.
Okay. I'm David Hunt, and I'll see you next time.